Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the Great Hall and felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes watching him. The Galactic Council chamber stretched out like a massive bowl around him, filled with beings from across the known galaxy. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms and clicking sounds that hurt his ears. Others were tall and thin, like walking trees made of metal and light. The strangest ones were just floating balls of energy that spoke through machines. Ambassador Morrison had been Earth's voice to the galaxy for 10 years now. He had shaken hands with creatures that had no hands and made deals with beings that thought in ways no human could understand. Today felt different, though. Today felt like an ending. Captain Lisa Hayes stood behind him in her crisp blue uniform. Her hand never left the weapon at her side, even though weapons were not supposed to work in the council chamber. The other humans, in their group, looked nervous too. Dr. Helen Carter kept checking her data pad and shaking her head. The young aide, Chris Adams, was sweating, even though the air was cool. The voice came from everywhere at once when Council Prime Yexathara finally spoke. The energy being's words were turned into sounds that humans could hear, but they still felt wrong somehow, like listening to music played backwards. "The matter of humanity has been decided," the Prime said, and the whole chamber went quiet. "After much discussion and many votes, we have reached our conclusion." Jake felt his heart beat faster. 3 months of hearings and debates had led to this moment. 3 months of explaining human actions and defending human choices. 3 months of watching alien faces turn away from him with disgust or fear. "Humanity is too dangerous to remain in civilized space," the Prime continued. "Your species brings nothing but war and destruction wherever it goes. You fight your own kind constantly. You destroy your worlds for simple materials. You kill for reasons that no other species can understand." The insect-like Kreeth delegate made the chittering sound that meant laughter in their language. "Look at their history. They have never known peace on their own world. Why would they bring peace to ours?" Jake stepped forward even though his legs felt like they might give out under him. "That's not fair, and you know it. Yes, we have wars, but we also have art and music and love. We've given more to this council in 50 years than most species give in their whole existence." A tall crystal being from Vextar rang like a broken bell. "You gave us weapons technology. You taught us new ways to kill. We gave you medical technology too," Dr. Carter said from behind Jake. "Human doctors have saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. We've cured diseases that your species thought were impossible to fight." The floating energy that was the Prime pulsed brighter. "And human soldiers have killed just as many. Your military advisors turned peaceful conflicts into bloody wars. Your merchants sell weapons to anyone with enough credits. Your explorers claim territory that belongs to others." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry now would only prove their point. "We've made mistakes, but we've learned from them. Give us another chance. Let us show you what we can really do when we work together." "The decision has been made," the Prime said, and the words felt final as a door slamming shut. "Humanity has 30 standard days to remove all presence from Council space. Every human colony must be abandoned. Every human ship must leave our territory. Every human citizen must return to their home system or face immediate destruction." The chamber erupted in sounds. Some aliens were cheering while others made noises of concern. Jake heard Lisa curse behind him in a way that would have made his mother wash his mouth out with soap. Dr. Carter was already pulling up star charts on her pad, probably counting how many human settlements they would have to evacuate. 30 days is not enough time," Jake said, raising his voice over the noise. "We have research stations in the outer rim that take 20 days to reach by the fastest ships. We have colonies with millions of people who need time to pack their lives and find new homes." "Then you should have thought of that before you proved how dangerous you are," said another delegate Jake didn't recognize. This one looked like a walking tree with too many branches. The Xanathi War would never have happened without human weapons. The coral plague spread because human traders ignored quarantine rules. The Broken Moon incident killed thousands because human engineers thought they knew better than everyone else. Jake wanted to argue each point, but he knew it wouldn't matter. The council had made up their minds before these hearings even started. Everything that happened here was just for show, just to make it look like they had been fair and listened to all sides. "You're making a mistake," he said instead, his voice carrying across the huge chamber despite being quiet. "Humanity has faults, but we also have strengths that you need. When the next crisis comes, and it will come because crises always do, you'll wish you had human creativity and human determination on your side." The Prime's energy form flickered in what might have been the alien version of a shrug. "We survived for millions of years before humans joined the galaxy. We will survive millions more after you are gone." Lisa stepped up beside Jake, and her voice was hard as steel. "Fine. We'll leave. But when you realize what you've lost, don't expect us to come running back just because you ask nicely." The chamber fell quiet again. Jake could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. This was the moment that would be remembered forever, the day that humanity was cast out of galactic civilization like unwanted children. 30 days, the Prime repeated. "After that, any human presence in council space will be considered an act of war and dealt with accordingly." Jake nodded once, turned around, and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence as every alien in the chamber watched the humans leave. Behind him, he heard the whispered conversations starting up again, some aliens already celebrating their victory over the dangerous humans. As they reached the door, Jake heard one voice rise above the others. It belonged to Zixandra, one of the few aliens who had ever seemed to actually like humans. "I hope we are not making a terrible mistake," she said to someone near her. Jake hoped so too, but he had a feeling they would all find out soon enough. Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the massive transport ship Liberty and watched the last human families board through the loading bay doors. 3 months had passed since the Council's ultimatum, and today was the final day. Every human settlement in Council space had been packed up and abandoned. Every research station had been emptied. Every diplomatic post had been closed forever. The evacuation had been the largest movement of people in galactic history. Over 200 million humans had called Council space their home, and now all of them were leaving. The logistics alone had been a nightmare that kept Ben awake for weeks. How do you move that many people across thousands of light years in just 90 days? But somehow they had done it. Humanity had always been good at the impossible when they had to be. "Captain, that's the last shuttle from the surface," reported his first officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster. "All civilians are aboard and accounted for." Ben nodded and looked at the view screen showing the planet below. New Geneva had been humanity's first colony outside their home system. Humans had lived there for almost 200 years. They had built cities and farms and schools and hospitals. They had raised families and buried their dead in the red soil. Now it was empty again, left to whatever species the Council decided to give it to next. "Any word from the other evacuation fleets?" Ben asked. "Admiral Sarah Blake reports that the Outer Rim colonies are clear," Amy said, reading from her console. "The research stations in the Vega sector finished loading yesterday. Captain Danny Sullivan says the mining operations in the asteroid belt are shut down, and his ships are ready to jump." Ben walked to the communication station and opened a channel to all human ships in the system. There were over 50 of them, everything from massive colony ships that could carry 1 million people to small cargo haulers loaded down with personal belongings that families couldn't bear to leave behind. "This is Captain Rodriguez to all vessels," he said into the microphone. "We are the last humans to leave Council space. In a few minutes, we will jump to hyperspace and join our people in the outer territories. I want everyone to take one last look at what we're leaving behind." Through The view screen he could see the planet that had been home to 8 million humans just 3 months ago. The cities were dark now, the farms abandoned, the spaceports empty except for the alien ships that were already moving in to claim what humans had built. It made his chest tight with anger and sadness at the same time. "Sir," said Lieutenant Chris Adams from the sensor station, "I'm picking up alien ships moving toward the planet. Looks like Xanathi colony vessels and some Kreeth merchant fleets." Ben wasn't surprised. The Council species had been fighting over human territory since the day the ultimatum was announced. Everyone wanted to claim the best worlds and the most valuable installations. They were probably disappointed that humans had been so thorough in their evacuation, taking everything that wasn't nailed down and some things that were. "They can have the empty buildings," Ben said quietly, "but they'll never have what made those places home." He opened another channel, this one broadcasting on all frequencies that the Council species monitored. His message would be heard on every world in Council space, by every alien who had voted to cast humanity out into the dark. "This is Captain Benjamin Rodriguez, commanding the final human evacuation fleet from Council space. To any who might be listening now or in years to come, we want you to remember something. We came to you in peace 50 years ago. We offered our friendship, our knowledge, our strength. We shared our medical technology that saved millions of lives. We shared our agricultural methods that ended famines on dozens of worlds. We shared our defensive technologies that protected your colonies from pirates and raiders." Ben paused and looked around his bridge. Every human face he could see was listening intently. These words would be remembered by their children and their children's children. "You chose to see only our faults and ignore our gifts. You chose fear over friendship. You chose to judge us by our worst moments instead of our best ones. That is your right and your choice to make. But remember this day. Remember that we offered you partnership and you demanded exile instead." He took a deep breath and continued. "We go now to the empty spaces beyond your borders. We take with us our knowledge and our skills and our determination to build something better. We take our compassion for those who suffer and our willingness to help those in need. We take our human hearts that love deeply and our human minds that never give up hope." The bridge was completely quiet now, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Through the view screen, Ben could see the other human vessels in formation around them, ready to leave forever. "You have cast us out, but you have not broken us. You have scattered us, but you have not destroyed us. Humanity will survive in the dark between the stars, and we will build new homes and new lives. And if the day comes when you need us again, if the day comes when you realize what you have lost, remember that you chose this path. The consequences of your decision are yours to bear alone." Ben closed the communication channel and turned to his navigator. "Plot a course for the rendezvous point in the Kepler system. All ships are to follow us out." "Course plotted and ready, sir," came the reply. "All ships, this is Rodriguez. Prepare for hyperspace jump in 60 seconds. Ben walked to the forward viewport and pressed his hand against the transparent metal. Somewhere down on that planet was the house where his daughter had taken her first steps. Somewhere in the empty cities was the hospital where human doctors had worked day and night to save alien lives during the plague outbreak 5 years ago. Somewhere in the abandoned settlements were the schools where human children had learned about the wider galaxy and dreamed of exploring the stars. All of it was being left behind now. All of it would be forgotten by the aliens who moved in to take their place. 10 seconds to jump," announced the navigator. Ben took one last look at Council space and made himself a promise. Humanity would remember this day. They would remember how they had been treated and why they had been forced to leave. But they would also remember who they really were. Not the monsters that aliens thought they were, but the people who had built something beautiful in the darkness and who would build it again. "Jump," he ordered, and the stars went white. Zixandra floated in her observation chamber above the Council capital world of Nexus Prime and watched the trade ships coming and going like tiny insects against the starfield. 2 years had passed since the humans left, and everything seemed peaceful. The council members congratulated themselves regularly on removing the dangerous human element from their civilization. Trade was good, conflicts were down, and the former human territories had been divided up among the member species without too much fighting. She should have felt satisfied. As one of the few council members who had voted against human expulsion, she had been proven wrong by the peaceful years that followed. Her people, the peaceful Luminar, were known for their ability to see the good in all species, but even she had to admit that the humans had brought a certain chaos with them wherever they went. The communication array in her chamber buzzed with an incoming priority message. Zixandra touched the control panel with one of her light tentacles and watched as the hologram of Admiral Kexthor appeared before her. The old warrior looked more worried than she had ever seen him. "Counselor Zixandra," the Admiral said, his 4 arms gesturing frantically. "We have a situation developing in the Outer Rim territories. Several star systems have gone completely silent in the past week. No communication, no trade signals, nothing." Zixandra felt a chill run through her energy field. "Which systems?" "Theta-7, the Kreeth mining colonies in the Vale sector, and 3 Xanathi agricultural worlds. That's over 50 million beings with no word at all. We sent scout ships to investigate, but none of them have reported back." The peaceful feeling that Zixandra had been enjoying vanished like mist. "How many scout ships?" 12 so far. Different species, different technologies, all the best pilots we have. They jump into those systems and then nothing." Complete silence. Zixandra moved closer to the hologram projection. Admiral Kexthor had been the Council's military leader for over 30 years. She had never seen him look frightened before, but there was something in his multiple eyes that made her light field flicker with worry. "What do the long-range sensors show?" "That's the strangest part," Kexthor said, pulling up a star chart with his lower right arm. "The stars are still there, the planets are still in orbit, but there are no life signs at all. No energy signatures, no heat sources, nothing that would indicate any kind of civilization." Zixandra studied the chart carefully. The affected systems were all on the edge of Council space, the frontier regions where different species had been expanding their territories since the humans left. Could it be some kind of natural disaster? A plague or solar flares? We considered that, but the pattern is wrong. Natural disasters don't spread from system to system in perfect timing like this, and they don't make entire fleets of scout ships disappear without sending so much as a distress call. The communication panel buzzed again, and another hologram appeared beside Admiral Kexthor. This one was Council Prime Yexthara, the energy being who had pronounced judgment on humanity 2 years earlier. The Prime's usual calm demeanor was cracking around the edges. "Counselor Zixandra, Admiral, we have received a partial transmission from the edge of the affected zone. The signal was badly damaged, but our technicians have managed to restore part of it." A new hologram flickered to life, showing a Vextar captain in what looked like the command center of a heavy cruiser. The crystal being's normally perfect surface was cracked and dim with fear. The audio was full of static, but the words that came through made Zixandra's light field pulse with terror. "Emergency transmission to Council Fleet Command. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. They're not ships, they're something else. Mechanical constructs the size of asteroids. They're consuming everything, converting matter directly into more of themselves. Our weapons have no effect. They're tearing the ship apart and rebuilding it into something else. Send help. Send everything you have. Don't let them reach the core worlds." The transmission cut to static and then silence. Admiral Kexthor's 4 arms were trembling. "We received that signal 6 hours ago. The ship that sent it was the heavy cruiser Bright Edge with a crew of 800. It was our most advanced vessel." "Have you sent more ships?" Zixandra asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. "We sent a full battle group of 20 ships. That was 4 hours ago. They reported contact with the unknown hostiles, and then went silent, just like all the others." Council Prime Yexthara's energy field was fluctuating wildly with stress. We estimate that these creatures, whatever they are, have consumed over 200 star systems in the past month. If they continue at this rate, they will reach the core worlds within weeks. Zixandra felt something she had not experienced in her long life. Pure, cold terror. Her species had evolved beyond fear eons ago, but this was something beyond normal understanding. What do our strategists recommend? Every defense plan we've developed assumes enemies that can be reasoned with or at least understood, Admiral Kexthor said. These things don't communicate, don't negotiate, don't even seem to notice our attempts at contact. They just consume everything and grow stronger. The three council members floated in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Prime Yexathara spoke the words that Zixandra had been dreading to hear. We need help. We need weapons and tactics that we don't possess. We need someone who specializes in warfare against impossible odds. You're talking about the humans, Zixandra said quietly. Yes, we cast them out as warmongers and savages. Now we discover that war might be exactly what we need to survive. Admiral Kexthor looked older than his many years. I've been reviewing human military records. From their time in council space, they never lost a major engagement. Their tactics were unpredictable and brutal, but incredibly effective. They specialized in fighting enemies that everyone else thought were unbeatable. Zixandra remembered the debates during the human expulsion. Hearings. So much had been said about human violence and aggression. Now those very qualities might be the only thing that could save them. Where are they now? She asked. Our long-range sensors lost track of the human fleet months ago, Prime Yexathara replied. They went beyond the galactic rim into the empty spaces between star clusters. For all we know, they could be anywhere. Or they could be dead, Admiral. Kexthor added grimly. The space beyond the rim is not friendly to organic life. Zixandra made her decision. It went against everything her peaceful species believed in, but these were not ordinary times. Send out a general broadcast on all emergency frequencies. Tell them what we're facing. Tell them we need their help. Tell them we were wrong. The other two council members looked at her with something between hope and despair. And if they refuse, to help us? Prime Yexathara asked. Zixandra's light field dimmed with the weight of what she was about to say. Then we deserve whatever happens to us. Admiral Tony Williams stood in the communication center of New Earth Station and stared at the message that had just arrived through the long-range transmitters. The alien text scrolled across his screen in the universal translation format that all spacefaring species used. He read it 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. The message was from Counselor Zixandra of the Luminar species. Tony remembered her from the old days when humans still had a seat at the galactic table. She had been one of the few, aliens who seemed to actually like humans rather than just tolerate them. Now she was begging for help. Sir, are you going to respond? Asked his aide, Lieutenant Nancy Foster. She was young and had never seen the Council worlds. Her whole life had been spent in the human colonies beyond the galactic rim, where they had built new homes after the exile. Tony saved the message and forwarded it through secure channels to Earth Command. This goes all the way to the top, he said quietly. The President needs to see this immediately. 3 hours later, Tony found himself in a video conference with the most powerful people in human space. President Amy Johnson sat at the head of the virtual table in her office on Earth. Around the conference screen were the faces of admirals, generals, scientists, and civilian leaders from across the human colonies. Everyone has read Counselor Zixandra's message by now, President Johnson said, her voice tired but controlled. Let's hear what our intelligence people have to say about this threat. Dr. Helen Carter, now the head of human xenobiology research, pulled up a holographic display showing the affected star systems. Based on the limited data we've received, these devourer entities appear to be some kind of self-replicating machine intelligence. They consume raw matter and convert it into more of themselves. The pattern of expansion suggests they're not random destroyers, but have some kind of strategic intelligence. General Rick Carter, no relation to the doctor despite the shared name, leaned forward in his chair. The council species are soft. They've lived in peace for so long they've forgotten how to fight a real war. Their military tactics are centuries out of date, and their weapons are designed more for show than for actual combat. That's not entirely fair, Admiral Sarah Blake said from her command ship somewhere in the outer territories. The council, fleets are powerful. If they're being destroyed this easily, then we're dealing with something far beyond normal threats. President Johnson looked around the virtual table at the faces of her advisors. What's our current military capability? Better than when we left council space, Admiral Williams replied. We've had 2 years to develop new technologies without council restrictions. Our ships are faster, our weapons are more efficient, and our tactics have evolved. We've also established manufacturing bases in 12 different systems, so we're not dependent on any single supply line. Lieutenant Chris Adams, now promoted to Intelligence Director, brought up another display. We've been monitoring council space through long-range sensors. The Devourer advance is accelerating. At current rates, they'll reach the core worlds within 30 days. Nexus Prime itself will fall within 50 days unless something stops them. The virtual conference room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Billions of lives across hundreds of worlds, entire civilizations that had existed for millions of years wiped out completely. How many human lives would it cost us? President Johnson asked the question that everyone was thinking. General Carter pulled up tactical projections. Unknown. We've never fought anything like this before. Could be thousands, could be hundreds of thousands. There's no way to predict casualties when we don't understand the enemy capabilities. Ma'am, Dr. Carter said softly, there are personal messages attached to the official request. Individual aliens apologizing for what their governments did to us. Families with children begging for protection. Scientists offering to share research that could help everyone survive. President Johnson closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, everyone could see the weight of decision in her expression. Admiral Williams, what does your gut tell you about this threat? Tony had been expecting this question. He had commanded human fleets for 20 years and fought in more battles than he cared to remember. These devourers sound like something that won't stop with council space. If they can consume entire star systems, then they'll eventually reach us too. Better to fight them now while we have allies, even reluctant ones, than to face them alone later. Admiral Blake, do you agree? Sarah Blake nodded from her command ship. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and if these things are as dangerous as they sound, we might be the only ones with the military experience to stop them. President Johnson looked around the table one more time. I want honest opinions. Should we help the people who cast us out as dangerous warmongers? The answers came quickly. Every military leader said yes. Every scientist said yes. Even the civilian administrators who had suffered the most during the Exodus voted to help. Finally, President Johnson spoke. Very well. Admiral Williams, you'll command the relief force. Take whatever ships and personnel you need. Admiral Blake, I want you to coordinate with our colony defenses in case this threat spreads beyond council space. What should I tell Counselor Zixandra? Tony asked. President, Johnson thought for a moment. Tell her that humanity remembers what it means to be civilized. Tell her we don't help people because they deserve it, but because it's the right thing to do. And tell her that when this is over, we expect things to be different between our peoples. Conference ended and Tony found himself alone in the communication center with Lieutenant Foster. She looked confused about something. Sir, can I ask you a question? Go ahead. Why are we helping them? They threw us out, called us savages, said we were too dangerous to live among civilized people. Now they want us to come save them with the very violence they condemned us for. Tony smiled grimly as he began composing his reply to Zixandra. Because that's what humans do. We help people even when they don't deserve it. We fight for others, even when they've wronged us. It's what makes us human instead of just another species of talking animals." He paused in his typing and looked at the young officer. "Besides, when this is over, they'll owe us everything. And maybe then they'll finally understand that being dangerous and being evil are not the same thing." The message to Zixandra was simple. Help is coming. Hold your positions as long as you can. Humanity has not forgotten how to fight. Within hours, human ships across the outer colonies began moving toward Council space. The exiles were going home, not as supplicants, but as saviors. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system like a storm arriving without warning. Admiral Tony Williams stood on the bridge of his flagship Defiance and watched the tactical display fill with red markers showing. Devourer constructs spread across the system like a metal plague. The machines were everywhere, some the size of small moons, others no bigger than fighters, but moving in perfect coordination. "My God," whispered Captain Danny Sullivan from the heavy cruiser Liberty. "There must be thousands of them." Tony had seen the reports, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The Devourer swarm stretched from the outer planets all the way to Nexus Prime itself. The Council's homeworld was still intact, but barely, surrounded by a thin shell of defending. Ships that were being picked apart one by one. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Council Defense Coordinator," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "Put it through." The hologram of Zixandra appeared on the main screen. The normally graceful Luminar looked exhausted, her light field flickering weakly. Behind her, Tony could see the chaos of the Council's emergency command center with aliens running in all directions. "Admiral Williams, thank the stars you came. We have maybe 6 hours before the last defense line breaks. These machines, they learn from every attack we make. Our weapons work once and then they adapt. Nothing we do seems to slow them down." Tony studied the tactical display while she spoke. The human fleet numbered 300 ships, everything from massive battle cruisers to fast attack corvettes. Against the thousands of Devourer constructs, it looked pitifully small. "Counselor, we need you to pull back your remaining ships. Our tactics work best when we don't have to worry about friendly fire. Admiral, with respect, you have 300 ships against an enemy that destroyed over 2,000 of ours. How do you expect to succeed where we failed?" Tony smiled grimly. "Because we fight dirty." The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have looked chaotic to any Council military observer. Instead of the neat lines and organized groups that galactic warfare traditionally used, the human ships moved like a pack of wolves, each captain given broad objectives, but free to achieve them however they saw fit. "All ships, this is Admiral Williams. Remember your training. These machines may be smart, but they've never fought humans before. Show them what that means. Attack pattern Delta 7. Execute." The first wave of human fighters screamed toward the Devourer lines at speeds that made the alien observers gasp. But instead of engaging the massive constructs directly, the small ships scattered at the last second and began attacking the connections between the machines. They had studied the partial recordings from destroyed Council ships and noticed something the aliens had missed. The Devourers were networked together, sharing information instantly across their entire swarm. Captain Lisa Hayes led her squadron of heavy fighters between two moon-sized constructs, her pilots firing concentrated bursts at what looked like communication arrays. "This is Red Squadron. We're seeing system failures in the target area. Whatever these antenna things are, they don't like being shot." Meanwhile, Captain Ben Rodriguez brought his battle cruiser in close to one of the largest Devourer units. Instead of using energy weapons like the Council fleets had tried, his ship launched old-fashioned kinetic missiles loaded with electromagnetic pulse warheads. The explosions lit up space with crackling energy that seemed to confuse the mechanical entities. "Target is showing reduced coordination with nearby units," reported his weapons officer. "The EMP is disrupting their network connections. Tony, watched the battle unfold with the eye of a veteran commander. The Devourers were adapting to human tactics, just like they had adapted to council weapons, but humans adapted faster. When the machines learned to defend against fighter attacks, the fighters switched to mine-laying. When the constructs developed EMP shielding, the human ships started using coordinated ram attacks that no sane military would ever attempt. "Sir, Captain Sullivan is requesting permission to execute the Crazy Ivan maneuver," reported the tactical officer. Tony almost laughed despite the desperate situation. The Crazy Ivan was a move that human pilots had developed during their exile, named after an ancient Earth naval tactic. It involved a ship pretending to retreat and then suddenly reversing. "Course to attack from an unexpected angle. Permission granted. Tell Danny not to get himself killed." The Liberty appeared to break off from its attack run on a massive Devourer construct, engines burning hard as if trying to escape. The machine intelligence took the bait and extended mechanical arms to capture the fleeing ship. At the last second, the Liberty flipped end over end and fired every weapon it had directly into the construct's main body. The explosion that followed took out 3 smaller Devourer units that had been moving to assist. The battle raged for 8 hours. Human ships darted in and out of the Devourer formation like angry wasps, never staying in one place long enough for the machines to lock onto them. They used tactics that no other species would have considered, ramming attacks that damaged both ships, suicide runs that took out targets 10 times their size, and coordination so loose it looked like chaos, but somehow worked perfectly. Gradually, the tide began to turn. The Devourer's perfect network coordination became a weakness when human cyber warfare specialists found ways to inject false information into their communications. The machine's ability to adapt became useless when faced with humans who changed tactics faster than the constructs could analyze them. When the last Devourer construct went dark and drifted lifeless in space, the entire system fell silent except for the soft hum of ship engines and the crackle of cooling weapon systems. Tony opened a channel to all ships, both human and alien. "This is Admiral Williams to all vessels. The immediate threat to Nexus Prime has been eliminated. Casualty reports indicate we lost 47 ships and approximately 2,000 personnel. The Devourer force in this system has been completely destroyed." The response from the Council ships was immediate and overwhelming. Voices in dozens of languages flooded the communication channels, all expressing gratitude and amazement. Tony listened to them for a moment before opening a private channel to Zixandra. "Counselor, we need to talk about the future. This was just one system. Intelligence reports suggest there are Devourer forces in at least 50 other locations. If the galaxy is going to survive this threat, things between our peoples need to change." Zixandra's light field was brighter now, pulsing with what Tony had learned was the Luminar equivalent of tears. "Admiral, anything you ask for is yours. We owe you everything." "We don't want payment," Tony replied. "We want partnership. Real partnership this time, where humans are treated as equals instead of dangerous children who need to be managed." The response came not just from Zixandra, but from voices across the Council fleet. Species that had voted to exile humanity were now volunteering to follow human military command. The same aliens who had called humans savage warmongers were begging them to stay and help rebuild galactic civilization. As Tony looked out at the aftermath of the battle, at the burning wrecks of Devourer machines and the small memorial beacons that marked where human ships had made their final stand, he knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of casting out those who were willing to fight for others. The Council had watched humans leave in disgrace 2 years ago. Now they watched humans return as saviors, and the flames that burned in the space around Nexus Prime would remind them forever of the price of prejudice and the value of those willing to stand against the dark.